The Ottawa Senators have been finding ways to win even without Linus Ullmark, their big new acquisition. Brandon Pillar of Locked On Senators is here to talk about that and their path to success going forward. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It is great to welcome back to the show the co-host of Sens Central, Locked On Senators, Brandon Pillar. And Brandon, it's been an interesting start to the season for the Senators. They win 3 of their first 5, and yet they do it without their big new acquisition, Linus Ullmark, who has missed some time.
Yeah, certainly Sens fans were very excited when Ullmark was brought to the team. More excited, Gil, when he signed a 4-year extension before even playing a regular season game. And then they get a performance that shows that he's a number 1 goalie in this league for the home opener, helping the Sens win that. Then a not so great performance up against the Montreal Canadiens. And then he ends up being hurt after that game, and he's missed the last 3 games. And the Senators have had to find ways to win without him. And they're able to get a couple wins. They might not have been pretty, but Sens fans are happy enough to take an 8-7 overtime win or a 5-4 regulation win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're not apologizing for that.
No, nor should you. And talk to me about Anton Forsberg and the job he's done subbing in for Ullmark.
So Anton Forsberg has had his ups and downs as a member of the Ottawa Senators, mostly downs, unfortunately, lately for the Sens, but he's had to step in with Ullmark being injured, and the numbers haven't looked great. Gil, he's at a 4.16 goals against average and a .863 save percentage, but he was able to shut the door on the Tampa Bay Lightning, who were undefeated before they entered the Canadian Tire Center up against the Sens. And that's all that Sens fans really cared about is, can you get your backup goalie to keep your team in the game? And he did. It was a back and forth 5-4 game up against the Lightning. And then the Lightning really pressed at the end of that game, and he made some key saves, and not only made those saves, but no rebounds, covers it up, allows for line change, allows to slow things down, because everybody knows, sure, the Tampa Bay Lightning is very different from when they were going to cup finals consistently, but they've still got those elite players, the Kucherovs, the Points, the Hedmans, etc., that you have to be worried about, and they're so dangerous. So for the Sens to come up with that win up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, even though it was close, it was still a big deal for the Sens.
Tell me about Ullmark's status. When do you think he'll be back, and what will it mean for this team?
So Ullmark has had a strain. They've been very kind of secretive about we haven't even got upper body, lower body, so we're not sure where the strain has been, but it doesn't really matter because it's shelved him for a couple games here. Travis Green mentioned that he could have played earlier, but it seems like they wanted to hold him out for precaution reasons, which I think is the right idea. No sense getting him in too early, and then he tweaks whatever strain it is, and then he's out again. Try to have Forsberg win that game for you, and he did. So Ullmark, in all likelihood, is going to come back for the Ottawa Senators game on Tuesday, which will be their first ever game up against the Utah Hockey Club in Salt Lake City. So nice to get your number 1 goalie back for that. And to give Sens fans even more faith that he's likely going to start that game, the Senators goalie prospect Mad Sogard was sent back down to Belleville. So clearly they're comfortable enough to ride with 2 goalies on this road trip. That means Ullmark's got to be ready to start, if not Tuesday, sometime on this upcoming road trip where they're in Salt Lake City, Vegas, and Denver.
What has been the key to success? I mean, you win 2 out of 3 and some high-scoring games. How
Oh,
have
yeah.
the Senators been able to do it?
So the Senators have a very high octane offense up front. They're able to score goals. They're able to hang with teams in run and gun style games like that. 8-7 overtime victory up against the LA Kings was an absolute gong show of a game, but the Senators are able to score their way out of problems. Like Forsberg started that game, he gets yanked, and Ahmad Sogard, the goalie prospect I mentioned, he had to go in that game too, and he didn't have a great game either. So they had to outscore their problems on that one, and they were able to do it. And a big reason why they're so successful scoring is the power play. The power play has been clicking for this Sens team. They're actually third in the league in power play percentage at 38.1 and first in the league in total power play goals with 8. So when the Ottawa Senators are able to get the other team into penalty trouble, hopefully agitate them the way this team was designed in the offseason, they wanted to get a little greasier, getting Nick Cousins, who famously apparently has the most punchable face of any NHL player, and they're agitating other teams, and they're able to get the man advantage, and more importantly, they're able to capitalize when they do. So that's been a big reason why, without great goaltending, at least other than the home opener, the Senators have still been able to find ways to win games.
And who are some of the players who have really come through, both on the power play and to get that offense going in general?
Well, Tim Stutzle and Brady Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson are the cornerstones of this team's success. A third overall draft pick, a fourth overall draft pick, and a fifth overall draft pick. So you need them to play well if this team's going to do anything. And luckily, Gil, they're up to 7 points each, and they lead the Ottawa Senators in scoring. You got Tim Stutzle, 3 goals, 4 assists, Brady Tkachuk, 2 goals, 5 assists, and Jake Sanderson, 1 goal and 6 assists. The Senators actually have 5 different players. They're at a point per game pace right now. So their top guys are able to produce right now. And that's kind of the key for the Ottawa Senators, as they're a very top-heavy offensive team, and they lack a lot of stability on defense, unfortunately, especially with Artem Zub, one of their best shutdown physical defensive defensemen. He's been shelved with the concussion that he suffered. So haven't been able to defend and keep the puck out of their net as well. But luckily, the offense is clicking, and it's a lot. It may not be a coach's dream. Travis Green probably stressed out, but for Sens fans, it's made for some entertaining games.
So what's your biggest concern? I mean, we're only 5 games into the season right now, but what has you concerned? What do they need to improve on to remain successful and basically stay in the playoff hunt?
Yeah, when you play a run and gun type game, you can get lucky certain nights and you can outscore your problems, and that can happen. But as a lot of teams know, it's not a sustainable formula if you want to have success over an 82-game season. And more importantly, the Sens are hoping to make the postseason for the first time in God knows how long. I can't even remember the last time they were in the playoffs. 2017, been a while. But if they want to play stable, consistent hockey, they can't rely on the run and gun. So they're going to have to be better defensively. And obviously, you want your defensemen to be better defensively, but I think the forwards are starting to realize too, we're going to have to chip in defensively as well. We're going to need to see better penalty killing. Although the power play has been great, the penalty killing hasn't been that great, and they need more of a balance on special teams if they're going to have success long term. And Ullmark's going to be healthy soon, which is great, and he's poised to really take over as a number 1 starter. He hasn't had the opportunity to do that in Buffalo. He split the net a lot of the time, and then obviously in Boston, famously, him and Jeremy Swayman were one of the league's best tandems, and they split the net too. But Ottawa, he's the number 1 guy. He's the main guy, but can Forsberg be solid? And he's going to have to be better than he's been lately when Ullmark needs those breaks on back-to-backs or during long road trips or things like that. So really the main things is the team's going to have to tighten up defensively, and they're going to need good performances from their backup goalie.
All right, Brandon, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
Yeah, so you can find us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. I can't help but call it Twitter, so I'm calling it Twitter still. At Sens Central. You can find me at Brandon Pillar1, and we're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Daily show, your team every day. You know that already. And we can't get enough of Sens hockey content, Gil, so we're doing the postcast as well after every single game. You have us going live for Ottawa Senators postcast, where you can hop in the chat, you can mix in some questions if you got burning questions you want to ask Ross or I, and we do the postcast after every single game live on YouTube.
Brandon, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging, so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.